Hello, hello. Happy Wednesday, July 30th, 2025. How are you doing? I wanted to come on and talk a little bit about the energies of this moment. I also wanted to just give a little reminder that I have a little offering that you've only heard about it if you've listened to my latest videos, because that's where I've included it. But I'm doing a sliding scale offering. So this is great for someone who has been maybe wanting to understand how I work or what my readings are like, and you can do it with very low commitment. So my request is no less than $22, but it would be a 20-minute-ish recorded reading that I would email to you. I do all my recordings over Zoom, so you can see your chart on the screen. What's needed is your birth date, birth time, and your birth location. If you don't have the time, or it's at least relatively close, I can work with that. If you don't have the time at all, I can give you some other ideas as to what's going on, but it'll be less specific about the different areas of your life. If you'd like to, like I said, take advantage of this, you need to by midnight Eastern Standard Time tomorrow, July 31st. So just be in touch with me. My preferred means of payment is through Venmo, Zelle in the States. If you are in another country, Revolut, or we can talk about other options. But again, it's sliding scale. You pay what you like. My request is just, if you can, not to go below the amount of minutes that I'll be providing. So $22 being the least. If possible. And I think that's all for that. So I figured I would put this at the beginning of the recording rather than at the end. What I wanted to talk about, though, is what we're experiencing since our new moon last week, which was a week ago tomorrow, Thursday. So I'd be curious how that landed. Anything that's happening in Leo season, which we are in. The sun is in Leo, and Leo is about drama and spotlights and being on stage and being self-expressive and being childlike and creative and flirtatious and, full of life and love from the heart. So that's this season in general. That's what this season likes of us. Now, we are in a bigger season right now, as we've been talking about forever. We have all these outer planets that have changed signs. And so it's been changing the way everything feels. And so all of the things that are going on with the inner planets, are giving us the more personal view of that, or like how it pertains to us in this moment, or how to work with it in this moment based on where all of those things are in our charts. That's why getting a reading is great every once in a while, because it'll just give you a sense of like, where are the planets and where are they in your chart? So oh, right, when the sun is in Leo season, that can be a hard time because it meets up with my Mars and Saturn together, That would not be as easy of a time. So, or any number of other transits, like any number. I mean, the moon can be on anything and have us feel a certain way. I just did a reading for someone 2 days ago who has like a bunch of planets like all together, and so like anytime the moon goes through that area, they have a difficult time because there's a lot of things they're feeling, because that's what the moon is about, what we feel. And so it's having, in this person's chart, multiple conversations with each of those planets in their chart all at once. So over time, you obviously get used to that feeling, but to know what it is helps significantly, just like if you're in a house that doesn't have windows, but you're hearing like booms outside and you don't know what it is, it would be really helpful if someone said, hey, did you know that there's a lightning and thunderstorm outside? You would then rule out every other thing that it could be, that is plaguing you, and just be like, okay, I can focus on that one thing and getting through that, So that is why I value astrology and providing these updates when I can. And obviously the readings are like one of my greatest joys. I love it so much. I feel like they're very potent. The person I had the reading with the other day, I did a live reading with them. They're like, is it normal for people to cry? And I'm like, actually, it's normal pretty much for people to cry when they're with me, because a big part of my work also is to kind of penetrate. Like, I use your chart, as a framework, but I feel into things. And I think because of that, it's the way that I'm communicating that people can really feel that and feel seen by the experience. And when we have that happen, it could move us to tears and in either direction. So Anyways, I just wanted to highlight all of that for the moment. So if you are in inquiry, please be in touch. So let's get back to like the moment, like let's talk about specifically today, because we have a ton of planets retrograde and they're in fire signs. And so, you know, the fire signs are our spiritual nature, our creative spark. You know, it's our temperament. It's, you know, where, you know, wherever fire is where the blood is going to flow to, you know, so this can represent anger at some level. It can represent that creative spark, you know, when we think about fire. It's also got a transformative energy and it's very fast. Just think about how fast fire spreads. So it's got that kind of nature when it's at play, like things move very fast. So in retrograde season, I'm calling this a retrograde season because we have Pluto in retrograde in Aquarius. That's in an air sign. We have Neptune in retrograde in Aries, also next to Saturn, who is also retrograding in Aries. All three of those planets are still newly in those signs. So we're getting a reflective moment about them being in those signs. Pluto just moved into Aquarius a few months back. Same thing with Saturn and Neptune into Aries. So when any planet retrogrades, it's saying, okay, I'm going to slow down now. I know I've given you a lot to think about and work with. Let's reflect. Let's take a few steps back, okay? And so we get a little bit more time with the decisions that we're starting to make or the ideas that we're starting to formulate or the creations we want to bring into this world or manifest. So as an example, at least with that Aries energy. But additionally, we know that Mercury has been retrograde, and it is also in a fire sign. It's in Leo, and that's where the sun is right now. So everything is a bit more dramatic in Leo, like that new moon last week was very dramatic. It was particularly dramatic because in Leo, it's opposing Pluto, who, again, Leo and Aquarius oppose each other. So that new moon was at, you know, at 2 degrees of Leo, and Pluto is at 2 degrees of Aquarius. So and it was already retrograding. So that was a moment where whatever the new beginning is that Leo wants to usher in, it wants us to take into consideration what needs to transform Pluto or be released Pluto for us to continue forward in this Aquarian way, you know, where we're restructuring society as an example. So, you know, we're taking a moment. So like, for instance, you know, we can all have our ideas of what's going to bring peace or what is going to bring solutions. But until we move into something, will we actually know how it's going to go? And then everything that follows that could shift and change. We don't really know. But it's actually in doing something, you know, moving forward a little bit, having some reaction to that and going like, okay, let's take a step back. Now we know how this tends to work. So that's just one example that I thought I would note because of that. We just experienced that last week. So Mercury is retrograding in Leo, and it's actually moving itself back to where that new moon went off. And again, that went off last Thursday. So it's to me saying, and you know, as Mercury is retrograding back, it's going to meet up with the sun, right? Because the sun just entered Leo. And Mercury is, you know, retrograding backwards through Leo. And it's not going to get all the way back to that 2-degree point where the new moon happened. I think it's going to get to 4 degrees. But it's going to come back. And on its way, it's going to meet up with the sun. And, you know, whenever the sun and Mercury meet up, including in a retrograde, it's always very illuminating. We are going to get direct messages. We are going to get, you know, this is the time for epiphanies and clarity and ideas. That's tomorrow. They actually come together, you know, tomorrow, at least in Eastern Standard Time, around like 7:45, I believe, tomorrow night. So, you know, just for between now and the next 24, 48 hours, really be paying attention. What are the messages you're receiving right now that are meant to help you with the way that you're meant to transform? What is the way forward? Okay, so that's helpful right now. But the other retrograde that's happening that just started today is Chiron. Now, Chiron is not a planet, it's an asteroid. It was discovered in the 70s, late 70s. And I just thought I would point out, if you're in and around the age of 50 years old, so late 40s, early 50s, that time frame, you're going through your Chiron return. So if you have Chiron in Aries, you've likely been through it unless it's at the very late part of Aries. in which case that would be, again, born about 50 years ago, ish from now. So 25, so it would have been set 1975-ish time frame, is where you guys are going to be really feeling Chiron in general right now. Partially because Chiron has moved into new territory. So it moved to like 27 degrees. It takes 50 years for it to get all the way around the zodiac. So it spends the most amount of time in Aries. So it's getting ready to eventually move into Taurus. That's where it is in my chart. I'm 47. And so, for those of us that are around our late 40s, it's going to be coming for us as we approach 50. So, but my point in bringing it to saying this now is that if you're in that time frame, there's a wound that happened early on in life that has, plagued you early on. It's a place you feel vulnerable. It's a place that has needed tending to throughout your life. Now, whether you've tended to it or not is anyone's guess. If you have been tending to it, there's a very good chance that over time you've learned new skill sets. You've learned new ways of being because of that wound, that have helped you get through life. And as a matter of fact, then become medicine to other people because you can share with them what you've learned through that experience. So that's a bit about how Chiron is or works in our charts. It's going to show us a part of our life where we were wounded, usually as a child. And as a result of that, we felt some way, and it just depends on what house it's in. For instance, if it's in the 10th house of career, we can have some issues around authority and claiming our own sense of authority, or having, lacked authority at home or have too much authority at home, that, we don't have a very healthy relationship with our own authority, as an example. It just depends on the house. The sign is going to tell us more of the flavor. So, in Aries, it's more about our identity, and in Taurus, it'll be more about self-worth. But for all of us, it's in a different house. So depending on the house will tell you, what part of you was wounded or what area of your life had wounding in it and you've been working with. So my point is, I encourage you to get a reading for no other reason than to understand that if you're at that age of life, because there's a lot of things going on at any given age that, are typical. We get our Saturn return at the end of our 20s into our early 30s. Our nodal returns are, right around that time as well. We have our, if you're going to have a Uranus return, you're about 84 years old. If you're going to have your Jupiter return, it's every 12 years. To be aware when these are actually happening will give you an idea of the kind of things that you could take advantage of or benefit from, or the things you might want to just be cautioned about, so you don't go, going outside into a storm with a metal pole, a lightning storm with a metal pole. You'd say, maybe I'm not going to bring that pole. So it's more like that. So the thing about Chiron is that it's retrograding today. So it has moved to, like I said, 27 degrees. So it's the furthest it's been in Aries, and now it's turning around to reflect on the new places it's been. So I would say those of you, like I said, that are in that time frame of your life, it's just good to go look at your charts and see what you really are meant to, be healing and then giving back to society. Because at this point in your life, you want to be sort of the alchemist in that way versus the wounded one. Because if you're not, you're going to probably do the next 50 years with that same wounding again, and you're going to get the opportunity to heal it. But hey, why not put some energy into this wound right now, heal it so that you can live the rest of your life from a more healed perspective. So I take that seriously for anyone that's got their Chiron in Aries, because it's wrapping up its time there. So even if it's, it's already passed over where it was, in your chart, that energy will, be there. And I think every time it's in retrograde, which it does, retrograde decently amount, at least once a year, you can use that period to sort of reflect on okay, what's transpired? What is it I'm meant to learn? What can I do to integrate my healing? How can I give back based on what I've learned? That kind of an idea. Okay, so that's Chiron retrograde. So I just want to say, though, some of our wounding things could be coming up right now. Now, the other thing I just thought I would just mention is, Mars right now is in Virgo. So for me, that is very practical. Like whenever anything is in Virgo, frankly, I don't have any planets in Virgo. So I'm a little jealous of those people who do, because I need a fire under my butt to get things done, because I'm a projector and I'm a visionary, an artist and poet. It's hard for me to get down into the nitty gritty. So I have to take advantage of when the planets are in, places that will help me with that. And Mars in Virgo has been one of them. So I've been like organizing it beyond belief right now. And it's so liberating for me. So I just thought I would mention that, because Mars is getting ready to go into Libra, after it's done in Virgo. That is going to happen on August 6th. So if you have anything that needs to get done, particularly detail-oriented, this is a really good time in this next week to do it. Obviously, keep in mind we are in a Mercury retrograde. The details, can be a little bit blurry, or we can have some of those tech and communication issues at this time. But to me, like, this is really good for filing and organizing, that kind of energy. Or look at where Virgo is in your chart. And for me, it actually is around, it's in my 8th house, and it's like the perfect thing for me to be working on right now. So just something for you to look at for you in your chart. When it goes into Libra, I think it's going to be helpful for what's going on in the world, because, Mars is going to go into Venus's sign of Libra. So that's its detriment. It doesn't usually like to be there, but I actually think when Mars moves into Libra, we have this like great negotiating power. So we can think about that on our own scale, but on the grand scale as well. Let's hopeful for harmonizing, negotiating for the greater good, kind of energy can come out with Mars when it's in Venus's sign. So that's what I will be intending for all of us. For no other reason than if that's helping all of us take steps forward for ourselves, negotiating on behalf of ourselves, putting our best foot forward, doing that within the relationships of our lives. It's a really good time to kind of think about that harmony, think of what Libra is about. So Mars is going to be doing that. So I just thought I would note that. And the other thing that's going to be happening is Venus. Now, mind you, just so you know, Venus and Mars can, they've been kind of in a square formation, which can create some friction. And so that can be relationship stuff. And so I think a lot of us have been dealing with relationship stuff for lots of different reasons. But what I want to say now is, Venus was in Gemini, where it's a bit more surface oriented, wanting to talk and communicate and network and have fun. It's going to go into Cancer, which is a very different energy, which it's much more protective. It's more motherly. It's going to be very boundary focused in healthy ways, I believe. So the only thing is, though, when she moves into Cancer, she's going to be squaring off with, continue to be squaring Mars, because that's what's been going on. But we'll also be squaring Saturn and Neptune in Aries, and that's the other thing that happens when Mars moves into Libra, is it will oppose those two. There's something else that's pretty cool that happens there. I'll get to it in a moment, going back to Mars. But the Venus piece that I wanted to just note is that it's a time to feel good about healthy boundaries. It's good to say no and protect ourselves. If we feel unsure about something, then protect yourself or go inward. Don't make any decision. Sometimes, during a retrograde period where so many planets are retrograding, don't make any big decisions. We're being shown a lot. We're going to have this Mercury cazimi tomorrow. All of this new movement with Mars moving, in a week into a new sign, Venus moving into a new sign. There'll be some more, distinctive energies coming in to help us see things from a different perspective. I do believe tomorrow is a pretty big day. And then I also think when we get to August 11th, when the Mercury is going to go direct, and also Venus is going to conjunct Jupiter, because that's the other thing that's kind of fun when Venus enters Cancer, is it's now right behind Jupiter. And that's always going to be generally good. I mean, when Jupiter and Venus come together. but in this loving sign of protective and mothering sign of Cancer. I think it's actually going to be very good. It's like healthy love, healthy boundaried love, but, protective and homey, let's just take stock of, what is there to be grateful for right now? I think it's, when we have so much going on in the world and, so much vying for our attention, including this video, it's really healthy for us to just take a moment and go, what do I already have? What am I grateful for? And how can I appreciate it? So now I wanted to get back to this big thing that's happening right now with the outer planets. So we've got, like I said, Pluto is in Aquarius at 2 degrees. Then you go 2 signs away, so skip Pisces. Then in Aries, we have that Saturn and Neptune in the early degrees of Aries. And then you skip 2 signs, and then you're in Gemini, and you have Uranus in the first 2 degrees of Gemini. That forms what we call a minor triangle. Okay, that's very opportunistic when they're in that formation, those 3 planets. So it's feeling like this is a time for us to really gain what are these 3 planets, because again, they're very slow moving. So they're going to be moving in, together, generally speaking. But this is a moment where they're trying to highlight this advantageous way that they are set up for us. Now, when that Mars moves from Virgo into Libra, it's going to form what we call a kite. And that is feeling like, to me, like it's like an activation of what those 3 planets are. So that's, like I said, happening next week. So it just feels like right now is a good time to wrap up old things. Use that Mars detailed energy if you've got to, take care of your budget, if you need to put a plan in place around your budget, or when you're going to travel, or the details of a trip, or the details of, how you're going to, bring a baby into this world. Whatever it is that you need to look at the details of, do it now, because we've got that Virgo energy. And, with Uranus and Gemini, that's going to be making that normal way that we would get that mercurial energy more unstable in Gemini. So we're going to be leaning a little bit more on things going through Virgo to help us in the mercurial ways. So to me, that's what Virgo, that's helpful. So, and it's going to help us when we need to negotiate later, to get those details done now. So get your ducks in a row, get the bills paid, get it ready to negotiate for what you need, what you desire to move forward. That's what I feel like when Mars moves into Libra, and that negotiating is about, is like, okay, I really see what my new life could be. I want to negotiate for it. I want to put in for it. What can I do with you're the constructor and creator of your life. So you're negotiating with yourself and the divine as to what that looks like. At any given moment, you can change the direction of your life. That is the opportunity we have at all times as sovereign beings, where we believe in free will. So, but when we have the sky presenting this moment, to me, it's a great, great opportunity. But like I said, so when that Venus, though, first moves into Cancer, it's going to be a little rough, and that's going to be this weekend. So, Venus moves into Cancer today, late tonight, but it's like when we're going to feel it initially in that first degree, of Cancer, it's squaring off with that Neptune and Saturn, but then it's what we call an inconjunct with Pluto. So we're going to feel some really intense things potentially in the first, over these next few days, I'd say through almost the weekend. So I would say lay low this weekend when it comes to, don't take things personally, because it's bound to be kind of loud. And I want to remind you that all of these retrograding planets, with the exception of Pluto, are in fire signs. So, anger, bursts of energy and temper can happen. But also when we've got these square formations, it's a little bit of, it's more like dukes up fighting. So just be, mindful of that and just take a step back when you can. And like I said, that's why I'm saying, focus on the details of your life and try to stay out of other people's for the moment, and see what you can gain, particularly today and tomorrow from Mercury and the Sun coming together in this conjunction. and giving you, you know, whatever this Mercury retrograde is trying to communicate for you. Again, you can look at Leo, where it is in your chart. That will tell you the area of life where there's, you know, some repeat messages. We had the Venus retrograde in this area of our chart 2 summers ago, I believe it was. Yeah, 2 summers ago. It's like the summer of Barbie. So if you want to look back to that time, Mercury is now going through that area, excuse me. So anyway, I think that's all I wanted to share. Let me just see. The retrograde, Venus, Mars. Yeah, and then we have our full moon in Aquarius on the 9th. Mercury goes direct on the 11th, and then the 12th, Venus and Jupiter come together. All right, my tickle in the throat's getting worse. So I'm going to stop it here. Have a wonderful day. Be in touch if you'd like a reading. Ciao, ciao.